Okay, there we are. Welcome to a special episode of the Director's Chair. I am your host, Cody House, and with me is a very special guest, JP Irvin. JP, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. You are a returning guest. You came on our initial series when we did the films of Hayao Miyazaki to talk about Lupin III, Castle of Cagliostro. And you brought up an interesting thing to talk about was the similarities and differences between Nausicaa Valley of the Wind and Princess Mononoke. And for those of you who don't know, in Japan this weekend, Miyazaki's newest film, his first film in 10 years, The Boy and the Heron, was released in Japan this weekend. I believe it's an adaptation of a book called How Do You Live? And I believe it deals with World War II, coming of age story around World War II, which that is a very heavy subject for Miyazaki and has played a lot in his films since he was a child during World War II in Japan, and even has stories of when the atom bomb was dropped and his family having to flee their homes and things. But today we're going to talk about not his first movie, but basically the movie that created Studio Ghibli, that they still count it as a Ghibli movie. And some would argue the other film we're talking, his masterpiece, or at least one of his masterpieces. I believe this is one of the first films he said was going to be his last film, and of course he's made 5 more films since then.
Yeah, he seems like the sort of person who won't retire.
Yeah, if you watch the documentaries they have about him in Studio Ghibli, you see him like complaining about having to work, but it's like, and then he complains about the other animators not working as fast or not doing it as well as him or something. And he's just like puffing away on his cigarette, being like, let me show you how it's done.
Yeah. Like Clint Eastwood, he just won't stop.
Well, they keep working. That's their, I guess, goal of defying aging and mortality. Tom Cruise runs. Everyone has their
Yeah.
everyone has their goals. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Princess Mononoke was that your introduction film to Miyazaki?
I got to watch it at the Inwood Theater in Dallas, Texas, when it was the day it opened up in the US. And that was my first Miyazaki movie. And I still have incredible memories of going to the theater with my friend and watching it. And my mother, what happened was, I was like, God, I was probably a freshman in high school when that came out. I'm walking out the door to go to school, to school. And she slaps a paper in my hand after saying my name like real hard. And you're like, okay, what in the world did you go like, what in the world did I do? And she basically slaps this newspaper in my hand and shows it to me and says, you're going to see this movie with your best friend, and that's in order, and we've already bought you the tickets, and that's that. And I looked and was like, holy cow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, okay. And after that afternoon on Friday, we went right over to the Inwood Theater, which was right by our house. And if you ever go to Dallas, the Inwood Theater is the most remarkable theater you'll ever go to. It was just amazing and a blast. And it's just a perfect movie.
I have to agree. Also, the Inwood is an amazing theater, so that has to be like a great movie theater experience, getting to see that in that theater. But this was also my introduction to Miyazaki because I believe when it got a US release, it was very heavily endorsed by Roger Ebert at the time. I believe he had it in like his top 5 films of the year. And basically called Miyazaki the Martin Scorsese of anime.
That yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would compare him probably closer to Walt Disney, but yeah. Um,
And I think at this time Disney already had the distribution rights for the Studio Ghibli movies, but I think they had only done one other dub at this time, and I think that's Kiki's Delivery Service.
yeah, the one I knew of was Kiki's Delivery Service, and they went through Miramax at the time because they were not about to release a PG-13 extremely violent, anime under the Disney label. And an odd thing about that movie is the story I've always heard is they sent it over to Harvey Weinstein, or Miyazaki sent a sword to Harvey Weinstein because this was the time period when Harvey Weinstein was there. And it literally it was a samurai sword, and he said no cuts. And
yep.
Because they had cut all his other films, just butchered his other films prior to this.
Yeah, prior to Disney like getting the American distribution rights and doing their version of the dubbings, I have heard like the Totoro and Porco Rosso like dubs are atrocious. Like whoever dubbed them
Nausica,
before.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, the dubs are apparently bad. Nausica was extremely, from what I understand, was just edited down like crazy and called like Warriors of the Wind or something like that. I don't fully recall, but the only one I know of that they didn't mess with was the original cut of Castle of Cagliostro.
Oh yeah, but that's interesting. But that's probably a different company that did that.
Yeah, it was a different company that. That's the only one of his movies that I know of in the U.S. that was not heavily butchered. At the time.
I mean, they kind of went all out though for this Princess Mononoke dub being the first theatrical film they released, because they got Neil Gaiman and Roger Avery to adapt the screenplay into English.
Yeah, they went all out. They knew what they had on their hands. They made one change to it, just one, where the character that was supposed to be the main character's, before he has to go on this great journey and leave, he's supposed to have a bride-to-be, and they didn't. Apparently, they were like, well, he's got a love interest later because he's forever gone from this village. He can't ever return. So they changed it from the bride-to-be to his sister. I guess my guess is because they did not want him to be like, wait, he has someone back home, So yeah, that's my understanding of it.
So in the Japanese version, she's supposed to be his bride-to-be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I think I remember that, but I think I've only watched the Japanese version once, because these Disney dubs are pretty good for what they are. And usually when you put them on automatically on a streaming service, that's the version.
Yeah, that's the version I've seen the Japanese version one time back in college 15, 16 years ago. And it is, the only voice that really seems to be radically different in style is Jigo's voice, who is, I think is it Jigo? I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's Billy Bob Thornton's character, because Billy Bob Thornton was criticized for the casting at the time by the diehards who had seen the movie, and the rest of us wouldn't have known. And I still think Billy Bob was really good in that role.
Yeah, I think overall it's a pretty top-notch cast, because you've got well, of course, you got the amazing Keith David, who also does the like prologue, and then is the Boar Lord, who's great. I mean, you got Minnie Driver, Gillian Anderson, Billy Crudup, Claire Danes. I mean, it's all pretty solid voice acting.
Yeah, it's a really amazing cast. It really is a phenomenal cast they put together. They went all out for it. It really was. It was kind of interesting that they decided to put so much into this anime, but they knew what they had, and I think it was something where anime was getting more popular, and they wanted to put their mark out there, and they did.
Yeah, and I think because by the time we get it in the US is also after the success of The Matrix, which is also a heavily played thing in bringing anime into the mainstream, I think.
I remember correctly. I thought we got the dub, and I thought it came out in 97 and Matrix came out in 99.
If the
because
dub
didn't it come out in 95?
97, I feel like Mononoke was released in the US in 99. I remember it getting like a lot of play.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was getting confused. They started work in 94, so it wouldn't have been released in 95, and then 97 in the US. It was released in. Yeah. You're right.
But it was released in 97 in Japan because I think I remember Access Hollywood or Entertainment Tonight talking about how it made more money than Titanic in Japan and was Japan's highest grossing movie until Spirited Away came out.
And Spirited Away, if we ever wanted to talk about Spirited Away again in some capacity, I would totally be down for that because that's the movie I think actually beats Mononoke, and Mononoke is very, very hard to beat. It is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say Spirited Away is his masterpiece. I got to see the stage version a couple of months ago because they showed it in theaters for the Ghibli Fest this year.
Oh, cool.
It was really well done, and they had like the same actor that plays her mom also plays the lady at the bathhouse that helps her.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool. And yeah, and if any of his plays could be adapted into a if any of his movies could be adapted, it'd be Spirited Away, but we're not really here to talk about that.
No. So we're here to kind of we've been talking mostly Mononoke because that was kind of our entryway. But we're here to talk about kind of the similarities and differences between this and Nausica Valley of the Wind. And there are a lot of similarities, especially since this was